The Universal Declaration of Human Rights is a declaration adopted by the United Nations General Assembly on December 10, 1948 at the Palais de Chaillot, Paris. The declaration arose directly from the experience of the Second World War and represents the first global expression of rights to which all human beings are inherently entitled. The full text is published by the United Nations on its website. The declaration consists of 30 articles which have been elaborated in subsequent international treaties, regional human rights instruments, national constitutions, and other laws. The International Bill of Human Rights consists of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, and the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights and its two optional protocols. In 1966, the General Assembly adopted the two detailed covenants, which complete the International Bill of Human Rights. In 1976, after the covenants had been ratified by a sufficient number of individual nations, the bill took on the force of international law. History, precursors. During World War II, the Allies adopted the four freedoms: freedom of speech, freedom of religion, freedom from fear, and freedom from want as their basic war aims. The United Nations Charter reaffirmed faith in fundamental human rights, and dignity and worth of the human person, and committed all member states to promote universal respect for, and observance of, human rights and fundamental freedoms for all without distinction as to race, sex, language, or religion. When the atrocities committed by Nazi Germany became apparent after the war, the consensus within the world community was that the United Nations Charter did not sufficiently define the rights to which it referred. A universal declaration that specified the rights of individuals was necessary to give effect to the Charter's provisions on human rights. Creation and drafting. The declaration was commissioned in 1946 and was drafted over 2 years by the Commission on Human Rights. The commission consisted of 18 members from various nationalities and political backgrounds. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights Drafting Committee was chaired by Eleanor Roosevelt, who was known for her human rights advocacy. Canadian John Peters Humphrey was called upon by the United Nations Secretary-General to work on the project and became the declaration's principal drafter. At the time, Humphrey was newly appointed as Director of the Division of Human Rights within the United Nations Secretariat. The Commission on Human Rights, a standing body of the United Nations, was constituted to undertake the work of preparing what was initially conceived as an International Bill of Rights. The membership of the Commission was designed to be broadly representative of the global community, served by representatives from the following countries: Australia, Belgium, Belarusian Soviet Socialist Republic, Chile, Republic of China, Egypt, France, India, Iran, Lebanon, Panama, Philippines, United Kingdom, United States, Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, Uruguay, and Yugoslavia. Well-known members of the Commission included Eleanor Roosevelt of the United States, Rina Copyright-Cassin of France, Charles Malik of Lebanon, P.C. Chang of the Republic of China, and Hanzim Mehta of India. Humphrey provided the initial draft which became the working text of the Commission. According to Alan Carlson in Globalizing Family Values, the Declaration's pro-family phrases were the result of the Christian democratic movement's influence on Cassin and Malik. Adoption. On December 10, 1948, the Universal Declaration was adopted by the General Assembly by a vote of 48 in favor, none against, and 8 abstentions. Honduras and Yamina Euro, both members of UN at the Timor Euro, failed to vote or abstain. South Africa's position can be seen as an attempt to protect its system of apartheid, which clearly violated any number of articles in the declaration. The Saudi Arabian delegation's abstention was prompted primarily by 2 of the declaration's articles, Article 18, which states that everyone has the right to change his religion or belief, and Article 16, on equal marriage rights. Eleanor Roosevelt attributed the abstention of the Soviet bloc nations to Article 13, which provided the right of citizens to leave their countries. The following countries voted in favor of the declaration. Despite the central role played by the Canadian John Peters Humphrey, The Canadian government at first abstained from voting on the Declaration's draft, but later voted in favour of the final draft in the General Assembly. Structure: the underlying structure of the Universal Declaration was introduced in its second draft, which was prepared by Rena Copyright Cassin. Cassin worked from a first draft, which was prepared by John Peters Humphrey. The structure was influenced by the Code Napala Copyright On, including a preamble and introductory general principles. Cassin compared the Declaration to the portico of a Greek temple, with a foundation, steps, 4 columns, and a pediment. Articles 1 and 2 are the foundation blocks, with their principles of dignity, liberty, equality, and brotherhood. The 7 paragraphs of the preamble setting out the reasons for the Declaration represent the steps. The main body of the Declaration forms the 4 columns. The first column constitutes rights of the individual such as the right to life and the prohibition of slavery. Articles 6 through 11 refer to the fundamental legality of human rights with specific remedies cited for their defense when violated. The second column constitutes the rights of the individual in civil and political society. The third column is concerned with spiritual, public, and political freedoms such as freedom of association, thought, conscience, and religion. The fourth column sets out social, economic, and cultural rights. In Cassin's model, the last 3 articles of the Declaration provide the pediment which binds the structure together. These articles are concerned with the duty of the individual to society and the prohibition of use of rights in contravention of the purposes of the United Nations Organization. International Human Rights Day. The adoption of the Universal Declaration is a significant international commemoration marked each year on December 10, and is known as Human Rights Day or International Human Rights Day. The commemoration is observed by individuals, community and religious groups, human rights organizations, parliaments, governments, and the United Nations. Decadal commemorations are often accompanied by campaigns to promote awareness of the Declaration and human rights. 2008 marked the 60th anniversary of the Declaration, and was accompanied by year-long activities around the theme Dignity and Justice for All of Us. Significance and legal effect. Significance. The Guinness Book of Records describes the Declaration as the world's most translated document. In its preamble, governments commit themselves and their people to progressive measures which secure the universal and effective recognition and observance of the human rights set out in the Declaration. Eleanor Roosevelt supported the adoption of the Declaration as a declaration rather than as a treaty because she believed that it would have the same kind of influence on global society as the United States Declaration of Independence had within the United States. In this, she proved to be correct. Even though it is not legally binding, the Declaration has been adopted in or has influenced most national constitutions since 1948. It has also served as the foundation for a growing number of national laws, international laws, and treaties, as well as for a growing number of regional, national, and subnational institutions protecting and promoting human rights. Legal effect. While not a treaty itself, the Declaration was explicitly adopted for the purpose of defining the meaning of the words fundamental freedoms and human rights appearing in the United Nations Charter, which is binding on all member states. For this reason, the Universal Declaration is a fundamental constitutive document of the United Nations. In addition, many international lawyers believe that the Declaration forms part of customary international law and is a powerful tool in applying diplomatic and moral pressure to governments that violate any of its articles. The 1968 United Nations International Conference on Human Rights advised that the Declaration constitutes an obligation for the members of the international community to all persons. The Declaration has served as the foundation for 2 binding UN human rights covenants, the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights and the International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights. The principles of the Declaration are elaborated in international treaties such as the International Convention on the Elimination of All Forms of Racial Discrimination, the International Convention on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women, the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child, the United Nations Convention Against Torture, and many more. The Declaration continues to be widely cited by governments, academics, advocates, and constitutional courts, and by individuals who appeal to its principles for the protection of their recognized human rights. Reaction, praise. The Universal Declaration has received praise from a number of notable people. The Lebanese philosopher and diplomat Charles Malik called it an international document of the first order of importance, while Eleanor Roosevelt, first chairwoman of the Commission on Human Rights that drafted the declaration, stated that it may well become the international Magna Carta of all men everywhere. In a speech on October 5, 1995, Pope John Paul II called the declaration one of the highest expressions of the human conscience of our time. In a statement on December 10, 2003 on behalf of the European Union, Marcelo Spatafora said that the declaration placed human rights at the center of the framework of principles and obligations shaping relations within the international community. Criticism: Islamic countries. Most Islamic countries have signed the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. However, in 1948, Saudi Arabia abstained from the ratification vote on the declaration, claiming that it violated Sharia law. Pakistan, which had signed the declaration, disagreed and critiqued the Saudi position. In 1982, the Iranian representative to the United Nations, Sedjuriko Rissani, said that the declaration was a secular understanding of the Judeo-Christian tradition, which could not be implemented by Muslims without conflict with Sharia. On June 30, 2000, members of the Organization of the Islamic Conference officially resolved to support the Cairo Declaration on Human Rights in Islam, an alternative document that says people have freedom and right to a dignified life in accordance with the Islamic Sharia, without any discrimination on grounds of race, color, language, sex, religious belief, political affiliation, social status or other considerations. Turkey, a secular state, signed the declaration in 1948. A number of scholars in different fields have expressed concerns with the declaration's alleged Western bias. These include Irene O., Abdulaziz Sachedina, Rifat Hussain, and Faisal Qati. Hussain has argued, "What needs to be pointed out to those who uphold the Universal Declaration of Human Rights to be the highest, or sole, model, of a charter of equality and liberty for all human beings, is that given the Western origin and orientation of this declaration, the universality of the assumptions on which it is based is at the very least problematic and subject to questioning." Furthermore, the alleged incompatibility between the concept of human rights and religion in general, or particular religions such as Islam, needs to be examined in an unbiased way. Irene O. argues that one solution is to approach the issue from the perspective of comparative ethics. Qati writes, "A strong argument can be made that the current formulation of international human rights constitutes a cultural structure in which Western society finds itself easily at home. It is important to acknowledge and appreciate that other societies may have equally valid alternative conceptions of human rights. On the other hand, others have written that some of these cultural arguments can go so far as to undermine the very nature of human freedom and choice, the protection of which is the purpose of the UN Declaration. For example, typical versions of Sharia law forbid Muslims from leaving Islam under the penalty of capital punishment. Likewise, blasphemy laws may be used to stifle criticism of Islam and may become a form of coercion against a true freedom of conscience. The right to refuse to kill. Groups such as Amnesty International and War Resisters International have advocated for the right to refuse to kill to be added to the Universal Declaration. War Resisters International has stated that the right to conscientious objection to military service is primarily derived from but not yet explicit in Article 18 of the UDHR, the right to freedom of thought, conscience, and religion. Steps have been taken within the United Nations to make this right more explicit, but to deter those steps have been limited to less significant United Nations documents. To the rights enshrined in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights one more might, with relevance, be added. It is the right to refuse to kill. Sean McBride, Assistant Secretary-General of the United Nations and Nobel Peace Prize laureate, 1974 Nobel Lecture. Bangkok Declaration. During the lead-up to the World Conference on Human Rights held in 1993, Ministers from Asian states adopted the Bangkok Declaration, reaffirming their government's commitment to the principles of the United Nations Charter and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. They stated their view of the interdependence and indivisibility of human rights and stressed the need for universality, objectivity, and non-selectivity of human rights. However, at the same time, they emphasized the principles of sovereignty and non-interference, calling for greater emphasis on economic, social, and cultural rights in particular, the right to economic development over civil and political rights. The Bangkok Declaration is considered to be a landmark expression of the Asian values perspective, which offers an extended critique of human rights universalism. Organizations promoting the UDHR, International Federation for Human Rights. The International Federation for Human Rights is non-partisan, non-sectarian, and independent of any government, and its core mandate is to promote respect for all the rights set out in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, and the International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights. Amnesty International, in 1988, Director Stephen A. Johnson and 41 international animators, musicians, and producers created a 20-minute video for Amnesty International to celebrate the 40th anniversary of the Universal Declaration. The video was to bring to life the Declaration's 30 articles. Amnesty International celebrated Human Rights Day and the 60th anniversary of the Universal Declaration all over the world by organizing the Fire Up event. Unitarian Universalist Service Committee. The Unitarian Universalist Service Committee is a non-profit, non-sectarian organization whose work around the world is guided by the values of Unitarian Universalism and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. It works to provide disaster relief and promote human rights and social justice around the world. American Library Association. In 1997, the Council of the American Library Association endorsed Article 19 from the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Along with Article 19, Article 18 and 20 are also fundamentally tied to the ALA universal right to free expression and the Library Bill of Rights. Censorship, the invasion of privacy, and interference of opinions are human rights violations according to the ALA. See also: Human rights, History of human rights. Non-binding agreements, Cairo Declaration on Human Rights in Islam, Vienna Declaration and Programme of Action, United Nations Millennium Declaration, International Human Rights Law, Fourth Geneva Convention, European Convention on Human Rights, Convention relating to the status of refugees, Convention on the Elimination of all forms of racial discrimination, International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, International Covenant on Economic, Social and Cultural Rights, Convention on the Elimination of all forms of discrimination against women, Convention on the Rights of the Child, Charter of Fundamental Rights of the European Union, Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, other. Slavery in International Law, Slave Trade Acts, Human Rights in China, Command Responsibility, Declaration on Great Apes, an as yet unsuccessful effort to extend some human rights to great apes. Racial Equality Proposal, The Farewell Sermon, Youth for Human Rights International, Notes. References. Sources: Glendon, Mary Ann. A World Made New, Eleanor Roosevelt and the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Random House. ISBN A978-0-375-76046-4, Hashmi, Sohail H. Islamic Political Ethics, Civil Society, Pluralism, and Conflict. Princeton University Press. ISBN A978-0-691-11310-4, Masink, Johannes. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights, Origins, Drafting, and Intent. University of Pennsylvania Press. ISBN A978-0-8122-1747-6. Price, Daniel E. Islamic Political Culture, Democracy, and Human Rights, A Comparative Study. Greenwood Publishing Group. ISBN A978-0-275-96187-9. Williams, Paul. United Nations General Assembly. The International Bill of Human Rights. In Twistle Books. ISBN A978-0-934558-07-5. Further reading, Feldman, Jean-Philippe. Hayek's Critique of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Journal des Économistes et des Études Humaines, Volume 9, Issue 4, 1145-6396. Mercer, John. For All Peoples and All Nations. Christian Churches and Human Rights. Universal Declaration of Human Rights pages at Columbia University, including article-by-article commentary, video interviews, discussion of meaning, drafting and history. Introductory note by Antonio Augusto Carnes. Section du Trindade and Procedural History on the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in the Historic Archives of the United Nations Audiovisual Library of International Law. External links, text of the UDHR, official translations of the UDHR, resource guide on the Universal Declaration of Human Rights at the UN Library, Geneva. Questions and answers about the Universal Declaration, text, audio, and video excerpt of Eleanor Roosevelt's address to the United Nations on the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, UDHR Euro-Education, Revista Envoa Euro A Declaration of Human Rights for the 21st Century, Introductory note by Antonio Augusto Carnes. Section du Trindade and Procedural History. Note on the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in the Historic Archives of the United Nations Audiovisual Library of International Law, Wikipedia, Universal Declaration of Human Rights, The Laws of Burgos, 500 Years of Human Rights from the Law Library of Congress blog. Audio-visual materials, LibriVox, Human Read audio recordings in several languages, text, audio, and video excerpt of Eleanor Roosevelt's address to the United Nations on the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, animated presentation of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights by Amnesty International on YouTube. Audio, statement by Charles Malik as representative of Lebanon to the Third Committee of the UN General Assembly on the Universal Declaration, November 6, 1948, UN Department of Public Information. Introduction to the drafters of the Declaration, audio-visual material on the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in the Historic Archives of the United Nations Audiovisual Library of International Law.